Welcome to Caernarfon Airport. My name is Paul Asbridge. I'm the Chief Flying Instructor for Eagles Wings Trust. Let me talk you through a typical flight lesson. This will be the first time that Sean, our student today, will have flown in a light aeroplane. First thing we do is sign the aeroplane out, having made sure that the daily checks have been completed, and we walk out to our aeroplane, being very careful to ensure that there's no airfield traffic. Our aeroplane today is a Piper Cherokee PA-28, and when we approach the aeroplane, first thing we will do is to inspect the aircraft to ensure that it is fit for flight, there is fuel in it, oil is checked, and everything is prepared, ready to go. Sean is being strapped in and she will be briefed. Any instructors watching, you notice the cowling is loose. We are waiting for the engineers to fix that before we go. So there we are. We're strapped in and I'll talk Sean through how the airplane is actually started and then brief her on a little bit more about her flight detail for the day.
Set to the left, and start on the left and go on to the right on our visual scan.
You can see the red light on there, that's the low voltage light. I've got the main power on and the beacon on just so people on the ground know that there's somebody in the airplane about to start it. And there's been a quick shout out the window, clear prop, to make sure that anybody who we can't see that might be hiding under the wings can hear us and are aware that the airplane's going to start. So there we are, propeller is turning, temperatures and pressures are green, starter warning light is out, and everything appears to be pretty much normal. We will have started the aircraft on the fuel tank with the lowest content. We start and taxi on the lowest tank and then we actually change to the fullest tank before we do our power checks prior to departure. A very important part of the flight training is knowing who is actually flying the aeroplane. Here I will explain to Sean how I hand control over to her and she in turn hands control back to me. And we use the phrase I have control and you have control. So again, Sean is quite clear what I expect of her and how I know that she knows that I'm flying the airplane and not her. So that's a very important part of our briefing today. We're now taxiing the airplane to Archer Point. Before we depart, one thing we'll be doing is making sure that the direction indicator, which is a gyroscopic instrument, is aligned with the magnetic compass. The magnetic compass is our primary navigation instrument on this aeroplane. So as I taxi the aeroplane, you can see my hand is on the black lever in the middle, which is the power control, the throttle, and you notice that we're not steering with what looks like the control wheel. I'm actually steering the airplane with my feet. Sean's feet are just gently on the pedal so she can feel how little movement is needed in order to control the airplane on the ground. We're just following another airplane to our departure point. We're now at the holding point. Today we're operating on runway 26 and we're going to run through our power checks before we take the airplane into the air. So of course it's very important to make sure engine temperatures and pressures are within limits, and we'll have changed the fuel tank to the fuller tank by now. RPM is raised to 2000 RPM and a series of actions I've taken. One is operating the magneto switches, 2 ignition circuits to make sure the engine will run within certain limits on both or on individual circuits, and also I'll be putting some hot air into the engine air intake to make sure that we get an RPM drop. We use the hot air to clear any ice in the carburetor. Okay, once the aircraft is prepared for flight and I've done my vital actions, my pre-flight checks, we'll be accelerating down the runway. I am very much in control of the airplane, although you will see that Sean has her hands gently on the control wheel. This is so Sean can feel how much movement is needed and get an idea of what I'm actually doing, although she is not actually doing anything to control the airplane at this point. Operating over the sea, so we've got a bit of a low level turnout. We turn at 300 instead of 500 feet on this runway. Also 300 feet I perform my after takeoff checks. So altimeter starting to move towards 300 feet. There'll be a left hand turnout for our south departure. There's our 300 feet coming up and our turn coming in. Also at this point in the flight I will do my after takeoff checks, checking that the flaps are retracted, landing lights shut off, the altimeter is set to the regional setting, the transponder is switched on as required, and all of my instrument gauges are green. We're now level at 2,300 feet. We'll be operating between 2,000 and 2,500 feet today. Before we start any air exercise, it's always important to have a very, very, very good lookout. As well as listening on the radio for other traffic, it's important we clear visually all directions so that when we're manoeuvring we're not going to conflict with any other traffic. The first part of this exercise will be showing Sean how to control the aircraft in pitch. Pitch is, in its simplest terms, moving the nose up or down, and we do that with the control wheel. So what I will show Sean now is how I can gently control the attitude and pitch by raising the nose and then lowering the nose. In order to do this, I move the control wheel towards me or away from me progressively and very, very gently, whilst keeping the top of the instrument panel position clear in my mind relative to the horizon. That's a nose up attitude, and we'll be back now to a level attitude. So Sean will have done a little bit on controlling the pitch of the aircraft. Having looked at the aircraft in pitch, the next thing I'm showing Sean is how we control the aircraft in roll. So we're well into the exercise at this point, and the first part was showing Sean how by putting a big input, that means turning the control wheel like you would with a car steering wheel, the aircraft will bank quite quickly. The rate of change will be quite high. If I put a small in, the rate of change of bank will be quite low. There's a small input. Now we've got the required angle, so Sean will have been shown how to centralise and hold the control wheel central. So the aircraft will maintain the new bank angle until we move the control wheel in the opposite direction to level the wings back to the datum attitude. Datum attitude is the attitude that we started on relative to the distant horizon. So again, just a little bit more work with the control wheel, looking at how we control bank. We've now completed our exercise with controlling the aircraft in bank and in pitch, and what you saw me doing there with the instruments was showing Sean how to maintain a work cycle, which is look out for other aircraft, being aware of where we are situationally, attitude, checking the attitude of the aircraft relative to the distant horizon, and checking one instrument at a time, so we should be maintaining 2,500 feet and a given heading. So again, bringing the instrument scan into our work cycle, lookout, attitude, altimeter, lookout, attitude, direction indicator. And that cycle will keep the aircraft pretty much on track and at the right height. And also the lookout element ensures that we are keeping a very, very good watch for other aeroplanes. We're now returning towards the airport, so the aircraft will be set up into a descent, and we will be positioning the aircraft for a join into our standard circuit pattern. Altimeter's coming down now, Initially we'll step down to 1,500, and then as we get closer to the airfield we'll go down to 1,300, which is the overhead joining height for Caernarfon Airport. It's lower than other airports, and it's because we have close proximity to our valley, and the jets tend to be a little bit higher than us, so we work a little bit lower. So now you can see the airfield out to the right hand side of the aircraft, which is standard procedure for when we're joining for a right hand circuit pattern. Again, using the information that I've given Sean during the training exercise, Sean is actually positioning the aircraft ready for our circuit approach and eventual landing at Caernarfon. So we're just crossing now onto the dead side of the airfield and descending. You can see the altimeter is now 1,000 feet. So we're now descending to be overhead the threshold at the far end of our runway at 800 feet, which is circuit height for Caernarfon. Okay, we're actually come to the end of the downwind leg now, and we are actually starting our base leg turn. So positioning for a right turn and descending the aircraft, configuring the aircraft for our approach. That's the turn onto final approach. The aircraft now has been configured. Full flap will have been selected as we come out of the turn, and the aircraft is aligned with the centre line of runway 26. At this point, Sean is still flying the aeroplane. I am actually being very careful, watching her every move, and my hand is quite close to the control wheel. Any assistance I will be giving Sean at this point. You notice I'm actually controlling the power at this point as well. So I'm using the rudder pedals and I'm using the power. Sean's using the control wheel to position the aircraft on the centre line. Again, we're coming in now to runway 26. Sean is still flying the approach. I'm talking to her very, very carefully. Now watch what happens on landing. She over-rotates. She knows too high. There it goes, I have control. At this point I take control of the airplane, tip the aircraft gently onto the centre line on the runway, and let the aircraft gradually decelerate. Being careful not to be too heavy on the brakes. Aircraft decelerates, exits the runway, and you'll see as we turn this corner you'll see a yellow line coming up. Once we pass that yellow line we are clear.